I pushed the front door open, my keys clinking as I dropped them into the glass bowl by the entrance. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that didn't feel right. The TV sat black and lifeless in the living room. The dining table was set, a plate of food untouched, the edges of the steak curling slightly from sitting out too long. A glass of wine half full, its surface still. I exhaled, shaking off the unease creeping up my spine. It was probably nothing. Maybe he got caught up at work again. Maybe I was overthinking. I walked toward the bedroom, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The second I stepped inside, I felt it. Something was off. The air carried a faint, unfamiliar scent. A cologne I didn't recognize. It wasn't his. It was sharper, muskier, laced with something almost foreign. My pulse quickened. My eyes darted around. Everything looked normal. The bed was made, the curtains drawn just as I had left them this morning. But that smell. It clung to the room, to the pillows, to the air itself. I swallowed hard. Before I could process it, the front door creaked open. His footsteps were casual, unbothered as he strolled in. I heard the dull thud of something hitting the wooden dresser. His phone. "Hey," he called out like it was just another night. Like nothing had changed. He started coming home late, later than usual, later than what could be excused by work. At first, I convinced myself it was normal. Projects ran over schedule, meetings stretched long, deadlines loomed. But then it became a pattern. The exhaustion in his voice felt rehearsed, the sighs too calculated, the excuses too easy. His phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was now always in his pocket, face down when he placed it on the table. I saw the way he glanced at it when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his fingers hovered just a second too long before dismissing a notification. Numbers I didn't recognize appeared in his call log, but when I asked, he brushed it off. "Work stuff," he said. I didn't argue. I should have. Our son saw it too. He watched me more than he watched his father, his eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. I smiled too much, spoke too little. I thought I was protecting him, but he wasn't a child anymore. One night my best friend leaned in, voice low, steady. "If something feels wrong," she said, "it probably is." I wasn't supposed to be here. I told myself I wouldn't do this, wouldn't let paranoia drive me to something desperate. But my hands were already on the glass doors of his office, pushing them open. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face before he smiled, that familiar, easy grin. "What are you doing here?" His voice was warm, welcoming, like I hadn't just caught him off guard. The office was dimly lit, his jacket draped over the chair, tie loosened. He looked tired. Or maybe just like a man pretending to be. I was nearby, I lied, stepping closer, studying him, searching for something in his expression. He didn't seem nervous, didn't fidget. If there was guilt, it was buried deep. For a moment I wanted to believe him. To believe us. My fingers brushed his, a forgotten instinct pulling me in. I kissed him, a slow, tentative press of lips, searching for something I couldn't name. He kissed back. But when I pulled away, his eyes weren't soft. They were guarded. Then from behind the office wall a phone vibrated. Loud. Persistent. I turned, my stomach sinking. His eyes flicked to the sound, then back to me, his expression shifting just enough for me to catch it. Tension, hesitation, calculation. He moved fast, too fast, reaching for his phone before I could react. "Just a work call," he said, voice too smooth, too casual. Nothing important. But I didn't believe him. Not with the way his grip tightened around the device. Not with the way his thumb hovered over the screen like he was deciding whether to silence it or answer. The buzzing stopped. Silence swallowed the room, thick and heavy. I took a step back, inhaling, and that's when I noticed it. His scent was wrong. Not his usual cologne. Something lighter, floral, undeniably feminine. It clung to his shirt, faint but unmistakable. I opened my mouth, then closed it. He saw the shift in my face. "A client," he added quickly, as if reading my mind. "I met a few today." At home, long after he fell asleep, I checked his phone. Every message was wiped clean. No history, no calls, no evidence of anything. My chest tightened. This wasn't just an affair. It was something worse. I wasn't alone in this anymore. My best friend sat across from me, stirring her coffee, eyes sharp with quiet concern. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice low. I nodded. "I need to know." That night we followed him. The city was alive, lights reflecting off the wet pavement, people moving in blurred motion. He walked into a quiet cafe, choosing a booth in the back. And then she arrived. Not a stranger. Not a mistress. Her. My best friend. My breath caught in my throat, my body frozen in place. They talked like old friends, like something more than that. The way he leaned in, the way she laughed, touching his wrist lightly. I felt the air shift before it happened, but my mind refused to process it. He tilted his head, said something soft, something that made her smile, and then he kissed her. Not hesitant, not guilty. Familiar. Natural. Like this wasn't the first time. The walls around me blurred, my pulse pounded in my ears. Betrayal, sharp and sudden, cut through my chest. Not just him. Her. The one person I thought I could trust. I didn't wait. The second he walked through the door, I was on him, my voice sharp, shaking, cutting through the silence like glass. How long? I didn't give him time to pretend, to lie. How long have you been sneaking around with her? His face stayed still, unreadable, as if my accusations were nothing more than background noise. It's not what you think. The words came too easily, too practiced, and then he walked past me. No apology, no guilt, not even the decency to fight back. Just indifference. Something in me cracked. My hands trembled as I stood there, alone in my own home, in my own marriage. I didn't hear our son come down the stairs until I felt his eyes on me, wide, careful, searching. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. The weight in my chest was answer enough. Later that night, my best friend's voice cut through the static in my head. If you start digging, you won't like what you find. I should have listened. I should have let it go. But it was already too late for that. The house was quiet, but his voice cut through the silence. I hadn't meant to listen. I was walking past the study when I heard it. Low, controlled, careful. She doesn't know anything. My body froze. The words were sharp, deliberate. Not about me. About her. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just an affair. It was something else. Something bigger. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart beat loud in my ears. Yeah, he continued, voice steady. It's handled. She won't find out. My stomach twisted. Handled? What the hell did that mean? Every suspicion, every doubt, every late night and secret call suddenly shifted into something I wasn't ready for. It was never just about another woman. It was something worse. I barely heard the footsteps before our son appeared. His eyes, full of quiet concern, locked onto mine. Mom, he said slowly, testing the weight of the moment. What's going on? I wanted to protect him, to keep him safe. But for the first time I knew I couldn't keep lying. The tension in my chest hadn't eased since that night. The weight of his words, the secrecy, the lies. I needed answers. So I followed him. He left the house late, thinking I was asleep. But I wasn't. I stayed 3 cars behind, hands gripping the wheel, my pulse steady but my mind racing. He pulled into a hotel parking lot, not the kind for business meetings. The kind for secrets. The kind for mistakes. I waited until he disappeared inside, then moved quickly, heart pounding. The hallway smelled of stale perfume and cheap air fresheners. Room 214. The door wasn't fully closed. A mistake or an invitation, I didn't care. I pushed it open. There he was. With her. She was laughing, slipping out of her coat, and he wasn't even surprised to see me. No shock, no guilt, just a quiet sigh, like this moment had been inevitable. My voice cracked as I spoke. How long? Before he could answer, movement from the doorway made me turn. Her. My best friend. She looked between us, face unreadable. You don't understand, he started, but I already did. It was over. He didn't deny it. He didn't beg for forgiveness or try to justify what I had seen. He just sat down, rubbed his temple, and exhaled like he was exhausted from keeping up the act. I was going to tell you, he said, but we both knew that was a lie. His voice was steady, rehearsed, like he had practiced this conversation 100 times. I've been preparing for this for months. The words were a punch to the gut. Not just cheating. Leaving. I blinked, struggling to understand, but then he said it. He had moved money, changed documents, made sure that when he walked away he wouldn't owe me anything. I felt sick. My hands shook as I gripped the back of the chair, trying to stay upright. The door burst open. Our son stood there, breath heavy, eyes scanning the room, taking in my tear-streaked face, his father's blank expression. How could you? His voice cracked, raw with betrayal. His father didn't flinch, didn't explain. He just grabbed his coat, walked past us and out the door like we were nothing. Like we never had been. The house was emptier than it had ever been. His closet, once filled with neatly pressed shirts, was bare. His desk, where stacks of paperwork used to clutter the surface, now sat clean, untouched, as if he had never worked there at all. He hadn't just left. He had erased himself, taken every trace of his existence, every last piece of what we built. The silence was deafening. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, feeling everything and nothing at once. My son moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding me, avoiding the weight of what had happened. I knew he was angry not just at his father but at me too, for not seeing it sooner, for letting this happen. But what choice had I ever had? The mirror in front of me reflected a woman I barely recognized. Hollow eyes, tired lines, a mouth pressed into something that used to resemble strength. I wasn't her anymore, the woman he married, the woman who believed in forever. I was someone else. Someone I didn't know.